Hello, Blue Dragons. It's time to ask Dr. Love. I'm Dr. George Xavier Love for the Ask Dr. Love podcast. We're live on Facebook, IG, and YouTube, and we can be heard on Spotify, iTunes, Radio Play, and other iPod platforms. You can listen to archive shows on anchor.fm. So you can say, hey Siri, play Ask Dr. Love podcast. You can say, hey Google, play Ask Dr. Love podcast. And as Eddie, the motivator, told me not to do that because we have multiple devices. So we got a hot show for you today. I am really hot. I am annoyed. I'm upset. And this has been going on for a couple of years. And I just got some new information that makes me even hotter. And I don't usually get this hot about a topic. And the topic is vitamin D a skin color hoax? That's the topic. So any questions you have about vitamin D, calciferol, about the kidneys, about bone marrow production, about hormone production, any questions you have about calcium, making bones, bone marrow, bones breaking down, osteoporosis, osteopenia, bone marrow testing, calcium level testing, any questions you have, put them in, start them right now because I'm going to hit the ground hard. Number one, vitamin D is not a vitamin. A vitamin is an essential nutrient that you have to take. Vitamin D is a hormone that your kidneys make to ensure calcium levels for bone growth. The kidneys make vitamin D from the sun. So sunlight makes vitamin D. You don't need to take a supplement, despite all the evidence and all the testing to the contrary. So we're going to break this down and we're going to let you decide, is it a hoax? So when did the sun become the cause of skin cancer? Since 1935 in North America, we, meaning the American public, have been afraid of the sun. And we've made the sun the bad guy. And we've made sun the cause of malignant melanoma, which is a fancy word for skin cancer. So we've been on the planet at least 80,000 years in current form as Homo sapiens sapiens. And we never heard of skin cancer until 1935, which is less than 100 years ago. So you might have heard of UVA and UVB, UV meaning ultraviolet. So ultraviolet A, for argument's sake, there's 500 rays coming down. UVB, there's only 10 rays coming down. So that's like 50 to 1, UVA to UVB. UVA causes skin cancer. UVB makes vitamin D. UVA penetrates into the body. UVB only penetrates into the skin. So obviously we want more UVB than we want UVA. However, they come together. We can't separate them. UVA, UVB, boop, come right from the sun. No way to separate them. So too much, you get skin burn. Skin burning. Suntan, just enough, you get suntan. And you get vitamin D, and too little, you don't get anything. Okay. So where's the controversy? So some guy who is the head of Harvard Public Health, 35-year-old guy, doing his best, makes a report about certain populations being vitamin D deficient. Now, I went to medical school. My cousins went to medical school. My uncles went to medical school. We know that rickets is the result of vitamin D deficiency. Rickets is a bone deformation. That means you end up looking like this. That's rickets. So, this guy studying the literature decides that there's two particular religious isolated populations that had children in their communities with rickets. These isolated religious separatist populations happen to be African Americans. And on that basis, this guy immediately blankets all African Americans as being vitamin D deficient. Now, I remember when that report came out in 2012, I immediately responded because I had a radio show. And I immediately responded with an email challenging him. He shared his research with me, which is what I just told you. And I said, how can you decide that these two separatist religious populations, small as they are, several hundred people, stand in for 36 million African Americans? How can you possibly do that? He said, because it's true. So I'm like, you're an idiot. You obviously cannot be reasoned with. So I dropped him. I did not believe that the majority of African Americans would believe that they don't get enough vitamin D from the sun and they have to take vitamin D supplements. Now, in the craziness, you've got to think about people who live on the equator, who live near the equator, people who live south of the equator. Who gets the most sun? Obviously, people on the equator. When is the most sun? Obviously, between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. That's the most sun. Who wants to be out in the sun at that time? Nobody, especially not if you live on the equator. You're hiding from the sun because I lived in Egypt. 11, boop, they're gone. They shut businesses down. They don't open up till 5. So everybody's hiding from the sun. So who's getting vitamin D? If you could only get it between 10 and 3. And this is the information that they put out there. Last night, I went on a dozen websites. I'm happy to share all the information. It's easily available to you on Google. How much sunlight do you need to make vitamin D? And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm really annoyed about this. They are saying that vitamin D can be stored. It's a hormone, of course, it can be stored. And that light-skinned people only need 5 to 10 minutes a day. That's all. So if you only, light-skinned people, 5 to 10 minutes a day, maximum 20 minutes a week, and you can store it. So if I need to be out in the sun, according to their terminology, between 10 and 3 for 10 minutes a day for 4 days, that's all I need. 10 minutes a day, 4 days. That's 40 minutes of sunlight, which can be stored. But it's got to be between 10 and 3. Why? Because you said it's the highest? Because you said it's not absorbed when the majority populations of the planet are not even worried about vitamin D? You came up with a test to determine how much vitamin D is absorbed. Now, let me stop you right there. What are we testing for? Oh, calcium absorption. And calcium is absorbed into the bones because the bones need to be strong from calcium absorption. So, a very smart Indian doctor decides to test the African American population that are lowest in vitamin D. And then he decides to do a calcium absorption test. And guess what he found out? African Americans as a group had the highest rate of calcium absorption. So now we got to go, excuse me, let me back that up. What are you testing for again? If you're testing for vitamin D for calcium absorption into the bones, and the very group that has the lowest vitamin D has the highest calcium absorption, what's wrong with your test? Oh, we're not really testing for calcium, we're testing for vitamin D. And there's an antibody that attaches to the vitamin D for people with light skin. And as it turns out, the people with dark skin don't have that antibody. So therefore, we can't measure the vitamin D in dark skinned people according to your test. You made up the test. You decided that vitamin D levels were too low, and you made people go to the store and buy vitamin D. But here's the kicker: who makes the money? The guy who delivers the test. So by putting out this nonsense that everybody's vitamin D deficiency, it runs you to your doctor to get the vitamin D test. That doesn't work. The test is wrong. The people who made it up is wrong. The department head of public health of Harvard is wrong. It's a hoax. Vitamin D is a hoax because the rest of the world would be suffering from bone deformity. They'd be having heart attacks on the spot. Oh, wait a second. You're telling us, the public, that if we don't get enough vitamin D, we're going to get heart disease and high blood pressure, and that we're going to get osteoporosis? Let's go around the world and see who has the highest population of heart disease, high blood pressure, and osteoporosis. Oh, it's the United States. Funny about that. Not in China, not in India, not in Africa, because those three have half the population of the world. We're only talking about North America and Western Europe have the highest rates of heart disease, diabetes, and osteoporosis. So clearly the premise is wrong, the test is wrong, and you're making money off of vulnerable populations of dark-skinned people by convincing them that they need to take vitamin D. Well, are there food sources? Are there natural food sources of vitamin D? Of course there are. Guess what? Deep sea, cold water fish. What's at the top of the list? Herring. What's number 2? Cod. What's number 3? Wild Alaskan salmon. Now, who eats herring? What population eats herring? The people who eat herring know that they eat herring. You can only find herring in a Jewish deli. You will not find it in Publix deli. Codfish, you will find in a Jewish deli. Rarely will you find codfish in a Publix deli. Now, salmon, wild caught Atlantic Alaskan salmon, which you'd have to eat twice a week. Twice a week, salmon. That sounds doable. Now, dark-skinned people are recommended 20 minutes in the sun 4 days a week. 20 minutes a day, 4 days a week. Oh, but it's got to be between 10 and 3. Well, guess what? There's an antibody in dark skin that protects from excessive sun because vitamin D is toxic at certain levels to dark-skinned people. That's why they're dark, because they get too much sun. The rest of the world needs more sun, and the dark-skinned people don't need as much sun. They get as much sun as they already need. 20 minutes, 4 days a week. These are their numbers. This is what they say. And then they say, oh, food sources are inconsequential. You can't eat enough. But what about people who live in Alaska? What about people who live in Siberia? What about people who live in Eastern Russia? Where do they get their vitamin D from? You know they eat it. They eat that fish that they catch. Deep sea, cold water fish is sufficient if you don't get enough sun. So vitamin D, the whole thing has been a hoax from day one. They tell us, oh, it's got to be between 10 and 3 because the angle of the sun prevents the absorption. Well, I'm here to tell you, I am not vitamin D3 deficient, and I'm not even taking a test. And I'm out every day 2 hours in the sun between sunrise and 9 a.m. And I get another 2 hours of sun between 4 p.m. and sunset. So I get 4 hours of direct sunlight a day, not in the time period that they say you can only absorb vitamin D. So they have misled you. They've misdirected you, and they've outright lied to you. It's a hormone. Your body naturally produces it. If you have a problem with anything I said, please contact me. I'm happy to share my resources. I'm happy to back up everything I say scientifically. And if you want to keep taking vitamin D, be my guest. And if you want to stop taking vitamin D, contact me and I'll walk you through the process. That's my rant for the today. And I could go on for another half hour of misinformation that our medical industry puts into the media so that we can be confused and make wrong choices that enrich them. They get rich off the test that's incorrect to start with. So if vitamin D is a thing that is directed at dark-skinned people, oh, you can't get enough because your skin's too dark. That is an outright lie. Oh, you can only get it between 10 and 3. That's an outright lie. Oh, you're north of the equator. If you're more than 30 degrees, you can't get it. It's an outright lie. And if they lie about something as simple as a vitamin that's actually a hormone, something that you actually produce, that God created us with the ability. If they lie about that, what else is our medical industry lying about? We're going to take a little commercial break right here for lovechigong.com. You want to boost your immune system. You want to learn how to protect yourself against viruses, bacteria, fungus, and parasites. You want to protect yourself from that. In Chinese medicine, we call that Wei Qi, W-E-I, which translates as defensive energy. And that defensive energy circulates 25 times on the surface of the skin during the day. And at nighttime, it retreats to the core and protects the internal organs with a 25-time circulation. To me, that sounds a lot like the lymph system. To me, that sounds a lot like interstitial fluid. And when the sunlight hits your skin, a message is sent to the kidneys to manufacture the hormone calciferol. And that transmits through the interstitial fluid. So you be the judge. You tell me whether you think it's a hoax or not. And I'll tell you whether they are telling you the truth or not. Mr. Motivator, do we have any comments or questions?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
The first question says, How do you get your D levels up when your doctor keep telling you you're deficient and you get sun?
Okay, so as I said, the test determines the antibody that measures the amount of vitamin D. But the point is not the vitamin D, the point is how much calcium your bones are getting. Now, the kidneys in Chinese medicine are responsible for bone marrow production. And clearly, Western medicine thinks that the kidneys are responsible for bone marrow production through the action of vitamin D. So, my point is ask your doctor if you're getting enough calcium in your bones. Ask him to give you a calcium measurement of your bones and not vitamin D. Whenever you see in the scientific literature that you need vitamin D, you probably just need more sun. Now, I have a question for you. Are you light skinned or dark skinned?
Oh,
I'll
that's
give.
for Yolanda.
You are dark skinned. Okay. Yolanda, do you have neck problems? Do you have bone marrow? You have vertebrae problems in your neck?
Shoot.
Is that a yes or a no? Or you don't know? Unless you have a bone marrow issue, then you're getting enough calcium in your bones. So if you're not a vegetarian, I'm going to tell you to eat herring twice a week, 4 ounces, cod twice a week, 4 ounces, Atlantic sockeye salmon, 4 ounces twice a week, and you'll get all of the vitamin D you need from there.
Shot. Oh, okay. Okay. Melody Miller want to know then what is the capsule that's being sold as vitamin D? Is it harmful?
It is not harmful because your body excretes anything that it can't use.
Okay. I have another question, but I think you answered it. I'll say it anyways. How do we work with dark skin if we're getting enough vitamin D?
How does what work with dark skin?
I don't know. I'm not sure what the question is.
How
How does
does
dark skin relate to vitamin D deficiency? You answered that.
I have already answered it.
Yes.
You only need 20 minutes 4 days a week, 15 minutes 5 days a week, 10 minutes 7 days a week. You're going to get it if you're outside between sunrise and 10 or 3 and sunset, no matter what they say. They lied to you about not being able to absorb outside of 10 to 3. That just means that's the highest rate of absorption. Okay? And you only need a few minutes a day because you store it. Whatever you make, you store. Now, here's a funny thing. When I go swimming, I rinse off at the beach. Do I go home and take a shower right away and scrub my skin? Is not the salt water good for you? I think it is. So I would wait 30 to 60 minutes after I get out of the ocean. Of course, you're going to take a rinse. You want the salt out of your hair and out of your face. The rest of your body, just a light rinse. And then wait 30 to 60 minutes before you scrub your skin because that vitamin D is still being absorbed.
What is the difference between D2 and D3?
The difference between D2 and D3 is the way they make it. The kidneys decide what it is that you need. And it's just what they sell because they can't sell D1, D2, D3, and D4. They can't sell it all together. So they have to break it into pieces. So D2 or D3. D3 is the more desirable, but D2 is cheaper. So they sell you D2 when you really want D3 because D3 is more expensive. And stupid humans, we want the cheapest. We always want the cheapest. I don't understand that. I want the best, no matter what it costs.
All right, that's all the question.
That's
Well,
all.
actually, maybe there's more.
I'm sure there's more questions because this is a hot topic. There's a lot of controversy. So I wanted to find out about vitamin D in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And it turns out there's a huge controversy in Africa because they don't do enough testing. Oh, we don't have enough, we don't have a big enough sample. You know, we got 3 countries out of 54. We got 3 countries out of 54 that we tested for vitamin D levels. And they were all low. And yet, nobody's suffering from osteoporosis in Africa. Nobody's suffering from rickets in Africa. So the things that we're concerned about, they're not suffering from those things. So that's why it's a big controversy among scientists in the world. The US is deliberately putting misinformation in the world like their science is the best and their test is just flat wrong. And a lot of scientists know that and they don't want to get involved. So they're like, I don't do vitamin D3. I don't do vitamin D testing because they know it's bogus.
What about vitamin D milk?
Oh my God. Okay. So vitamin A and D is added to milk. Why? You're not going to believe this story. In the 30s, there was something called the Great Depression. And dark-skinned people were dying from starvation. And it was an embarrassment to the entire world. And it turns out that dark-skinned people were mixing milk and cornstarch together for nutrition because that is all they could afford. And a very nice Jewish doctor from New York went down south and started testing the people who were dying. And he figured out all they needed was milk with vitamin A and D added, and they would not die. So that's why they decided to add vitamin A and D, because you could live off of that mixed with cornstarch. Now, you don't eat cornstarch today. You don't even know what cornstarch is. You might know what corn grits is. You might know what hominy grits is. But unless you're Hispanic, you never even heard of cornstarch. And that is what the problem is. So we just don't want the dark-skinned people to die. We don't want to be publicly embarrassed that we're letting our citizens die. And then we turn around and blame other countries for the way, for human rights abuses, but we won't look at our own backyard and see what we're doing. So you cannot blame the victim. You cannot blame dark-skinned people for eating off the dollar menu when you won't pay them a living wage to eat better. And then you won't educate them that living off the dollar menu will actually shorten their lifespan. Lack of education and lack of self-value. And that's why I'm here in your ear and in your face to give you value. And if you don't value yourself, you will surely get old, get sick, suffer, and die prematurely. you have to give value to yourself. And I'm here to give you the information so that you can give value to yourself. And I will give you the steps so that you can thrive and not just survive.
All right, Dr. Love, we got two more questions, and we have to go. Is milk needed daily at all?
I just sent a meme of a cow suckling an adult male. And that's a ridiculous image of a cow suckling an adult human, because cow's milk is for baby cows and mother's milk is for human babies. There's no need to ever drink cow's milk, ever. That was a survival mechanism when nutrition was not available. Those days are over. We do not need cow's milk or cows.
And the last question from Rico Davis is, what can you say about vitamin K12? Is it supposed to work in synergy with D3? K2.
K2. Yes, vitamin K2 is supposed to work in synergy with vitamin D3. And I have a complete list of food sources of K2. Now, this is going to turn into a course in nutrition. And what are the nutritional supplements that you need? And I must make it clear again, a vitamin is an essential nutrient that you must consume. And a hormone is something that your body produces. And if osteopenia, which is thinning of the bones, leads to osteoporosis, which is weakening of the bones and the bone marrow, that will also affect your brain and your uterus. And your hormones are at interplay in all of that. So if you learn how to do Qigong and you practice it on a daily basis, you can reverse osteopenia, osteoporosis. You can reverse brain degeneration. You will increase neuroplasticity. You will reverse sarcopenia, which is muscle thinning, and increase physical strength even when you're 65, 75, and 85 years old. And that's what Qigong will do for you. LoveQigong.com. Go there now. I want you to like and share this podcast because I'm upset about the misinformation and disinformation that's out there regarding light-skinned and dark-skinned citizens of this country. And if you want to make your immune system strong, if you want to build up your defenses, then you've got to learn Qigong. LoveQigong.com.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Love, for your great knowledge. Someone said 100 years from now, your videos will still be available.
I surely hope so. And I hope 100 years from now, I'll still be alive.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
So you're going to close out?
Yes. I'm going to close with your health is in your hands. Prevention is the only cure. In order to be well, you've got to chi well. Oh, we got the theme song. Ole, 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 ole. Blue Dragon, Qigong. Blue Dragon, Qigong. Ole, 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 ole. Blue Dragon, Qigong. Until tomorrow, I'm Dr. George Love for the Ask Dr. Love podcast, and my wonderful partner here, Eddie, the holistic motivator.